Honourable Prime Minister, Honourable Leader of Opposition, Honourable Members of Parliament, fellow Fijians. I rise to respond to the 2021-2022 revised budget. I thank the Honourable Attorney General and the Minister for Economy for the post-COVID economic and social recovery budget. The revised 2021-2022 budget is a continuation of the Fijian government's commitment to Fijians. As the Honourable Minister for Economy stated, recovery is underway as shown by many indicators, including the 25,000 jobs added to the formal sector and a similar number in the informal sector, as well as the increase in hotel bookings. Mr. Speaker, sir, ordinary Fijians must be given relief from the external shock that has pushed the price of basic needs such as fuel and food. This budget provides relief to ordinary consumers to adjust the cost of living through increase in minimum wage rate, zero rating of VAT on 21 basic consumer items, reduction in fuel tax, increased allocation for hotels, restoration of rural allowance, and many more. Mr. Speaker, sir, not too long ago, Honourable Lewer did question about the restoration of rural allowance, and I remember that very clearly. Today, he did not even acknowledge that the restoration of rural allowance have been made despite the current situation. The budget that was delivered focused on social recovery from the economic shock caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine that has pushed the price of goods and services. Considering that the crisis affects not only Fiji but also the whole world, the government has realistically and comprehensively addressed issues across the board. Mr. Speaker, sir, the allocations for my two ministries have been increased. The 2021-2022 revised budget has kept the funding for sanitary pad initiative. This initiative is part of the government's commitment to promote the safe menstrual health of our girls. Mr. Speaker, sir, this initiative is keeping our girls in schools. Each year, government allocates an average of 60 million in free education grant to schools. To equip our heads of schools better with financial management skills and knowledge, the ministry rolled out online financial management course to ensure a high level of compliance with the financial guidelines. We are targeting to complete the training of the rest of the heads of schools in the upcoming months. Mr. Speaker, sir, with the global shift towards adoption of technology in education, it is imperative that the ministry continues to evolve and embrace technology to enhance teaching and learning. In order for us to achieve this, it is important that schools are connected to the internet. This was made possible through the government's initiative of connecting the unconnected communities by providing connectivity to 26 rural remote schools in the Northern Division. Mr. Speaker, sir, good education requires good school infrastructure, including teachers' quarters. The ministry received an additional 2.4 million for capital works in the revised budget to improve or build teachers' quarters, ablution blocks, and driveways for schools in remote rural areas. Mr. Speaker, sir, the ministry continues to encourage teachers to upgrade their qualification. While the opposition and union created negativity and uncertainty amongst teachers, but teachers understand the importance of upgrading their qualification. The ministry has been allocated an additional 1.7 million to increase the salaries of teachers who have upgraded their qualification. The ministry welcomes new policy announcements and initiatives pertaining to TSLS. Given the circumstances faced by Year 13 students, temporarily lowering the cut-off marks for TSLS awards to 250, except for commerce category, will allow more students to enter tertiary institutions. And I must say, Mr. Speaker, sir, I express my disappointment with Fiji Times and Communication Fiji Limited, Fiji Village, for irresponsible and unethical journalistic behavior. These two media organizations isolated a single comment and presented it without context, insinuating it was directed at the student in question. Mr. Speaker, sir, the National Topper Scheme, the role is to enable the government to strengthen sectors of the economy where employees are needed by providing scholarship for students seeking an education in those fields. It is to ensure that the gaps in underserved economic sectors in Fiji are filled, so we have enough engineers, pharmacists, lab technicians, nurses, plumbers, electricians, and agricultural specialists, and many more to keep our nation progressing. We are investing in students not just for them to attain higher education, but also making sure that they get into areas which offer better job prospect and, of course, meet Fiji's needs. This is a common sense-based and practical initiative to provide support for those sectors where there is demand. Predictably, Honorable Prasad has jumped on CFL's and Fiji Times sensationalizing misinformation. It is common knowledge that CFL and Fiji Times will provide headlines for NFP on statement from government ministers in a negative way, many at times commenting without due care on the context of the statement. Can Honorable Prasad explain to law students why they are not eligible for NTS? Can they explain to students in other fields that are oversupplied with graduates why they have not received scholarship? Don't they have aspirations and dreams, Mr. Speaker, sir? What about those students who have been adhering to this policy and understand why this criteria was applied? There are over 500 students studying law at the 3 universities in Fiji. Can Honorable Prasad go and explain to the hundreds of law students why he is only pushing for MBBS scholarship and not LLB scholarships? We urge everyone to think about national priorities. Under the 2013 Constitution, everyone is treated fairly. Mr. Speaker, sir, under the Bainimarama government, education was made free up to the end of secondary school, and university education is subsidized with extremely cheap loans and scholarship. In 2019, 3 years ago, Fiji had crossed the World Health Organization threshold of 1 doctor for every 1,000 people. However, with the change in dynamics caused by pandemic, TSLS reviewed the policies based on needs, not only in public sector, but also private sector. And I must say, Mr. Speaker, sir, that TSLS is a statutory body which is governed by the board, and it has its own CEO. They do their own due diligence, they carry out the surveillance, they do the research, they do the fact-finding. That's when they are able to either increase a particular quota or decrease a particular quota. Mr. Speaker, sir, the regulation for TSLS is very clear. It simply says that if a quota is not filled, then TSLS can reduce the marks to fill the quota. So that provision is there, and TSLS can use that provision whenever it's needed. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is very important for TSLS to consider Fiji's needs when it comes to giving scholarship or giving loans for these studies. Today, I would like to highlight there is shortage of teachers in special and inclusive education, ECE, primary teaching, and what are we doing about it? What we have done, we have increased the scholarship in this area, and we are encouraging Year 13 students, if they wish to join teaching field, this is the area they should be applying for, because they will get the job immediately. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, sir, in secondary school, there is shortage of teachers in maths, physics, computing, physical education, music, arts, and industrial arts. We also have surplus teachers. Surplus teachers are in the field of chemistry, biology, accounting, economics, agriculture, and so forth. These are the teachers who graduated from 2018-2019. and they're still applying for a job, but we don't have a vacancy, Mr. Speaker, sir. So these are the constraints we are facing. But I would like to highlight one simple point here, that the dynamics of workforce is changing globally. And I'm sure the opposition have heard about mass resignations that is taking place in certain countries around the globe. It is after COVID-19 that the job seekers have decided that they do not wish to be employed anymore. And that has created a lot of shortages in the market. And today we see that our people who are well-skilled, they are being recruited by companies in Australia, New Zealand, US, and other places. So based on these needs, definitely the dynamic has changed, and therefore we have to increase the number of scholarship and also reduce the marks so that we can fill the quota and get our workforce ready. Mr. Speaker, moving on to the Ministry of Local Government. The Ministry for Local Government and the 13 municipal councils are working closely with the Department of Town and Country Planning to accelerate block zoning, building and subdivision in areas where growth pressure has been realized. Mr. Speaker, sir, due to the effects of the pandemic, the market vendors' stall fees was paid by the government to the municipal council. This was done to provide some relief to over 8,000 vendors. In this budget, an additional 2.6 million has been allocated to extend the waiver of fees to all kiosks and sweet cart operators. Mr. Speaker, sir, a sum of 2.5 million has been allocated in this financial year to pay base fees for PSV owners. This allocation has again strengthened the revenue stream of the councils and supported the operations and infrastructure projects. Mr. Speaker, sir, the removal of business licenses has contributed towards ease of doing businesses as well as investments. The provision of business license grant to the small municipal councils will continue with the service delivery without any disruption. Mr. Speaker, sir, the pandemic has had a huge impact on the implementation of capital projects due to supply chain disruption and travel restriction. Despite the hurdles, the Ministry of Local Government will continue to implement capital projects that make our towns and cities more vibrant. Mr. Speaker, sir, the sum of $348,000 has been allocated towards the maintenance of Ratu the Kambau Park, particularly Pavilion B, to improve the stadium and its facilities for sporting purposes. Pavilion A, work on Pavilion A is already complete, but the work on Pavilion B requires additional funding, which has come through this budget. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are also progressing with our Nakasi Farmers Market. The market is targeted to assist farmers and to provide the much-needed fresh vegetables, root crops, fruits to the people around Nakasi and Davulevu. A budget allocation of 300,000 will ensure that the market is completed in a timely manner. Mr. Speaker, sir, the funding of 81,000 has been allocated to Namaka Market Complex, and this amount will help in completing the remaining works, which was mainly the car park area, so that the council can start generating some revenue. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, let me turn to some of the comments that were made earlier, and particularly on OMRS. It appeared as if OMRS is only used in the teaching field or in the education sector. But let me clarify that OMRS is for the whole of civil service. It is an equitable, transparent process. Just like any other sector, employers select the best person for the job. But Mr. Speaker, sir, we have been hearing this from the opposition quite a bit. But let me give you a bit of a history in terms of how teachers were selected in the past, Mr. Speaker, sir. Did you know that union representatives sat in the central board to strongly advocate for the teacher of their choice? Why else would they be part of the panel? It was wrong for them to sit in a panel or even recommend promotion. Their sitting on the panel led to promoting their favorite teachers who were union members and not those who were not members. What business does union have to sit in this board to even recommend? Union in the and particularly in the recruitment process. And I would like to ask, which other ministry or private sector entertains that? Which ministry or private sector has union rep who makes this recommendation? We have not heard of this before, Mr. Speaker, sir, but this was the practice. The system of appointment was flawed, with union given the unreasonable leeway to be part of the board to push their members' agenda. The role of the union is not to recommend who should be appointed, but it is solely the prerogative of the employer. Unions are not employers of teachers. This flawed system and processes had been noticed and corrected in 2008, and this has been further streamlined in a very transparent manner. And Mr. Speaker, I would like to reiterate that in the OMRS process, it's not just the ministry that PS sits, but there are other people who sit on this process, and if a person misses out or is not happy with the way interview was conducted, they have all the right to take the matter to PSC for a review. And that is an open process. But unlike what was happening before, Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, the issue of TELS loan was also raised, that the loans are very high and how will they pay the loan? But we had streamlined the process, and I want to say that the interest rate for loan scheme is low now based on household income, including recipients' annual income. For example, if the household income or recipient's income is up to 25,000, there is zero interest. In other words, you don't pay any interest. If it is between 25,000 to 50,000, then it's 0.5% interest. And 50,000 to 100,000 is 1% interest. So the interest amount is very low. And if the recipient pays in the first 2 years, they receive 50% discount, Mr. Speaker, sir. And once again, we have heard from Honorable Lewere, and this is the confusion that we normally see with the opposition. When we talk about consultation, on one hand, we are saying, why are you consulting? Well, you're not consulting enough. You should be having more consultation. You don't know what is happening in that particular field. But when we do consultation, then it is seen as electionary. In other words, we are participating or involving ourselves in election. But that is not the point, Mr. Speaker, sir, because we are the government, we have to do our job, and we are doing our job. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.